Part 11. Global Copy, My Talent is Called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 101. For a whole Sunday, Luzaoki stayed at the training ground to adapt to her abilities. The good news is that he can finally fly. The bad news is he can fly, but he can't stop. After an exciting day, Luzaoki discovered a new problem. That is, the recovery speed of mana is much slower than that of pure physical strength. The basic recovery speed is the same as that of spirit, and physical recovery potions are basically ineffective in mana recovery. He can only take comprehensive recovery potions or mental recovery potions now. The fastest way to recover is to meditate and circulate the heavens through static exercises to speed up the recovery of mana. Regarding the cultivation of Kung Fu, Luzaoki is still confused. Because since the first time he practiced sleeping, after success, the subsequent training has evolved to fully automatic. In fact, the use of mana is not just as MP. It has endless magical uses. However, Luzaoki is too good at it. He didn't dare to act rashly when he first saw the way. Although he can freely mobilize mana to circulate in his body, he knows from reading the common knowledge of cultivating immortals that this thing cannot be played casually. If something goes wrong, it will be difficult for the gods to save it. In short, he, a golden elixir master, is still in the exploratory stage when it comes to cultivating immortals. When he is done exploring, he will share it with his sister. Maybe it will be useful to her too. Currently, Jindan can only be used as a power bank temporarily, so it is embarrassing to encounter this problem of recovery speed. 2 hours of charging and 5 minutes of use, an exaggeration, this is too embarrassing. Fortunately, his skill Bladestorm is now a continuous output skill, and the longer it lasts, the higher the damage, so there is no battery life problem for the time being. He tried out his new skill Power of the Four Extremes. After turning it on, you can switch between the four forms at will. In the form of Earth, his whole body will glow with a dark blue luster, and his defenses will be greatly strengthened in all aspects. In the form of Wind, his speed can be as fast as lightning, and he can hit the wall without even reacting when flying. Superior. The water form seems ordinary, but the whole person is as if it is plugged into a charging station, and it is very exciting. The fire form is a pure explosive item, the fire power, tisk tisk, let alone talk about it. The boss of the training ground asked Luzaoki talked about the issue of compensation. With these four forms, Luzaoki's abilities in all aspects have been greatly enhanced. In terms of self-protection and defense, there are reversal and counter-attack. The form of Earth has defense strengthening, earth protection, and it is easy to shake mountains, but it is difficult to shake mountains. The form of Wind has the flow method of wind, the form of Water has no form and form, using softness to overcome hardness, the form of Fire reborn from the ashes. In terms of output damage, there are Bladestorm combined with passive abilities, the Wind forms wind and thunder induction and disintegration, the Water forms undercurrent surging, the Fire forms mana burning and potential explosion. In terms of escape and pursuit, there is the comprehensive blessing of Wind form. Only the control aspect is lacking. Only the power of the Earth's leyline has an additional bonus to the grab judgment. The problem is that Luzaoki has no need at all. What Luzaoki pays attention to now is one word: seconds. If one move can't kill you, then use 2 moves. If you can't kill him with 2 moves, then use 4 moves. I'll summon 4 Bladestorm in one go, and I'll ask you if you're scared. At night, he tried practicing the exercises again. This time he did not fall asleep. He clearly felt countless spiritual energy from heaven and earth pouring in. Such speed and efficiency. No slower than him taking the cultivation resources. He is now open to eating resources and running skills, plus the passive influence of Heavenly Sun. He directly cultivated to the maximum speed and gained enlightenment state. That's watching your own mana library soar. This is no longer as simple as double happiness. It's simply so satisfying that my mother cries, it's so satisfying. After practicing for a night, Luzaoki felt refreshed. The only drawback was that although her mana increased rapidly, after practicing for a night, she felt that her MP limit had increased by at least 1/3, but her level had not increased much. If there was a progress bar, Luzaoki's realm would have improved by about 5% from the early stage of the golden elixir to the middle stage of the golden elixir in one night of practice. But this is understandable. As I said before, this technique has a special feature, which is called the dual cultivation of life and life. This means that once you understand it well, your level will naturally rise, and your strength will also increase. If you don't understand it well, you will naturally have to work hard to hone your magic power and temper your body, getting twice the result with half the effort. The advantage is that it is not easy to go wrong in practice, the state is stable, and the foundation is solid. The disadvantage is that improvement all depends on appearance and understanding. If you understand, you will take off. If you don't understand, you will g. Perhaps Luzaoki's hidden attributes are all focused on charm. Although he is smart, his understanding is indeed quite poor. In addition, the techniques of cultivating immortals are no longer within the scope of knowledge and understanding he has learned in the past few decades. It is a beginner's first practice, a first glimpse of the door, and a pure newbie. How can Luzaoki understand the exercises? It all depends on the 100% enlightenment brought by the Son of Heaven. But the benefits were very obvious. When he woke up from his enlightenment, he found that his golden elixir was smaller than before. This is not a disadvantage, but a huge benefit. For the same amount, your volume is smaller than others. What does this mean? It shows that your quality is high. The smaller Luzaoki's golden elixir is, the higher his total mana is, and the purity of his mana is also much higher. The faster the mana runs, the stronger the mana's blessing on the body. From this we can see the abnormality of enlightenment. And Luzaoki is even more perverted, because every time he practices, he has an epiphany. On Monday, Zhao Xueqing notified Luzaoki to wait for her early, and the two made an appointment to meet on the rooftop of the school building after school. When they met, the two looked around to make sure there was no one around. Mainly because at this time, very few people came to the rooftop. Very good. No moles, start trading. I sent someone to investigate about the man in grey robe, but nothing has been found so far. Zhao Xueqing looked much more relaxed. It must be your misunderstanding. I hope so. Luzaoki couldn't tell whether the grey-robed man he saw was a cultist. Since Zhao Xueqing's power couldn't find any clues, it was useless to worry about it. It is better to relax your mind, practice hard, and actively deal with the changes that may occur next. By the way, I found the skills you need. See if they work. Zhao Xueqing handed him a few skill books. The Way of the Drifter, rating, B. Your own critical hit chance is doubled. In addition, you accumulate a layer of shield while moving, and the shield will be automatically triggered when receiving damage. Way of Hunting, rating, B. Every 2 attacks will cause a certain amount of magic damage. Skill attacks will also have a critical hit effect. Soul Reaper, rating, B. Harvest nearby souls to strengthen yourself, duration, 2400s. Every 10 soul points can provide 1 point of defense and 1 point of attack, invalid for targets with too large a difference in strength. Star Guardian, rating, C. Call upon the power of starlight to heal teammates and restore 10%. Add 354, affected by mental strength, health to a single target. Hymn Singing, rating, C. Bless teammates with sacred power, and the group recovers physical strength and spirit for 20 seconds. 2 C-rated books and 3 B-rated skills. Moreover, Way of the Drifter and Way of the Hunt also have a bit of a combination of skills in them. One adds a critical hit, and the other adds a critical hit effect to the skill. Not to mention Soul Reaper, a passive similar to growth skills. The only regret is that it is not permanently blessed. The active healing skills are all rated C. On the one hand, it is because the 3 passive skills above are already worth the same as the 8 bottles of water of the Forgotten River God that Luzaoki took out before. On the other hand, it may also be because they thought that the active skills were too high, and Luzaoki couldn't use them at his current level. After all, the realm he has shown to the outside world is still in the middle stage of Starlight. If you give him a B-rated active skill, he will not be able to use it even if he learns it, what others think is not Luzaoki's true ability. If it weren't for this consideration, others could have given Luzaoki 3 A-rated healing skills. Passive skills are so rare and precious, so it's normal not to give them to you. Anyway, the value is pretty much the same. A-rated skills are still worth these bottles of water of the Forgotten River God. Looking at these books, Luzaoki frowned. Aren't there any lower-level passive skills? For example, something with a C rating or a D rating. Zhao Xueqing was speechless and gave him a roll of her eyes. You think you're buying food at the market? You can get whatever you want. These passive skills are already the ones that best suit your needs after I had people choose from them. Why do you want to learn that kind of rubbish passive with a D or C rating? Then don't worry about it. I just asked you if you have any. Luzaoki waved her hands and didn't care at all. If my skills can be upgraded, will I tell you? No, Zhao Xueqing answered simply, and when she saw Luzaoki's disbelief, she explained again. Although the value of skills is related to ratings, it also has a lot to do with the number of skills circulating in the market. Passive skills are very rare on the market, and the output of the lowest D and C ratings and the highest A and S levels is even more outrageous. Even our Zhao family only has a few copies. So the price of books with low passive ratings may not be cheaper than the current prices. Global copy, My talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 102. After some explanations from classmate Zhao, Luzaoki finally understood. Forget about feelings, this passive skill is expensive, but the price/performance ratio is ridiculously low. The most terrifying thing is the passive skills rated D and C. It's obviously not good, and a low rating means that the attributes are not very good, but because of the small production, the price is outrageous and is on par with a B-rated passive. Luzaoki thought of the leak she picked up at the auction house before and couldn't help but shake her head. If it weren't for the fact that the passive enhancing cultivation was too useless, it was used to speed up cultivation. Everyone felt that there was no need to do it for something that could be done with cultivation resources. If you insist on wasting a valuable skill bar, it probably won't be his turn to buy it. He also realized the preciousness of the basic throwing mastery that had been revealed in the tower before. Even so, Zhang Heng and Zhao Xueqing gave it to him without caring. Nothing more to say, just 2 words, good brother. Fine. AB rating is AB rating. Anyway, I have plenty of water of the Forgotten River God. The worst I can do is go somewhere else and get another one. After you have digested it for a while, I will come back and change it again. What are you doing here? A voice with the unique majesty of the head teacher came from behind the 2 of them. Luzaoki stiffened and turned around. Xiao Yan walked up to Luzaoki on high heels and looked at the 2 of them suspiciously. Strange. How come you, a woman, can't make any sound when walking in high heels? Luzaoki blinked. It's nothing, Teacher Xiao, I'm just talking to Luzaoki about studying. Before Luzaoki could reply, Zhao Xueqing spoke first, and then said to Luzaoki, it's nothing, I'll leave first. She winked at him and signaled to call him if anything happened. Goodbye, Teacher Xiao. Zhao Xueqing said goodbye to Xiao Yan politely and turned to leave. Well, the second grader asked the first grader to discuss their studies. It seems reasonable to say. How reasonable? If it had been someone else, She, Xiao Yan, would have believed it, but if it had been Lu Zioqi, it would be strange for her, Xiao Yan, to believe it. Why do we have to go to the rooftop to study? How? It's very windy on the rooftop, isn't it easy for the CPU to dry out? Who will believe you? Looking at Zhao Xueqing's leaving figure, Xiao Yan's mouth twitched, and she turned around and said to Lu Zioqi sincerely, although you will graduate in 2 months. But as the head teacher, I still have to give you a piece of advice. Restrain yourself. Don't go to Huo's little girl. Coincidentally, Xiao Yan was inexplicably sad today. When I thought about leaving the place where I had stayed for several years in 2 months, I was filled with emotion and decided to go to the rooftop to have a good look at the scenery of the school and miss the past time. As a result, as soon as I stepped onto the top floor, I turned around and saw a pair of boys and girls sneaking around on the rooftop doing something unknown. Take a closer look, Huo. Still an acquaintance. Zhao Xueqing and Lu Zioqi in her own class. When Xiao Yan saw the two of them walking together, her first reaction was, is this guy in a relationship with Zhao Xueqing? After all, she also came from that grade, as a young Mue. I understand everything. On the way back from participating in the adventurer assessment, Lu Zioqi's performance in the unexpected accident was remarkable and dazzling. The best MVP in the game. It is completely in line with girls' expectations and yearning for heroes. In addition, this bastard also looks, pretty decent. With the blessing of the life-saving grace, it is understandable that Zhao Xueqing would be a little frightened towards him. Thinking of this, Xiao Yan felt a little uncomfortable. It seems like a good cabbage is about to be eaten by a pig. But it was more of the sense of responsibility from the head teacher that made her realize that she had to stop this relationship. Zhao Xueqing's family background is unusual. Although she doesn't know it completely, she still knows a little bit about it. She was even more familiar with the situation at Lu Zioqi's home. She personally applied for Lu Zioqi's annual poverty subsidy and student scholarship. Can two people with such disparate relationships and status come together? Obviously enough. So instead of letting them start a wrong relationship due to the restlessness of adolescence, and end up suffering and being beaten by each other, it would be better to let her, the selfless head teacher, ruthlessly destroy this ignorant feeling before the mistake happened. So she walked forward quietly, interrupting the whispers between the two people. Seeing the bad opportunity, Zhao Xueqing used her cards to escape. Xiao Yan was powerless to stop her, so she could only turn around and sternly warned Lu Zioqi, she is not someone you can mess with. Be careful of getting angry. You should understand what I'm going to say. Today's class teacher is wearing a black professional attire, with curvaceous curves and curves. The suit on the upper body is slightly tight, highlighting the proud figure, and the high points are round and full. The skirt on the lower body reaches the knees, revealing a pair of beautiful legs wrapped in stockings, and the blue-gray high heels make the figure even more upright. A pair of rimless women's glasses hung on her oval face, softening her originally slightly strong expression. Danfan's eyes were half squinted, her red lips were slightly pursed, and her whole person's temperament seemed both cool and noble. This outfit, this appearance and temperament have made many LSPS secretly drool today. Lu Zioqi nodded like a chicken pounding rice, I understand. I understand. I understand. But the peripheral vision couldn't stop lingering on Sister Yan. There was no one around. Lu Zioqi swallowed, her lust started to rise in her heart, and she was daring to do evil. She said something out of nowhere, Sister Yan, I won't provoke her, but can I provoke you? Xiao Yan? Be bold. I think you want jockey me and Ziu. Lu Zioqi. Xiao Yan was furious and raised her hand to teach Lu Zioqi a lesson. Ah! I was wrong. I was wrong. Lu immediately ran away with his head in his arms, Sister Yan, I never dare to do it again. There was a trace of blush on Xiao Yan's pretty face, but it was difficult to chase people while wearing high heels, so she could only put down her hands bitterly, stamp her feet, and shouted, "Get out of here. I'm leaving now." Lu Xiaoqi nodded and bowed, and disappeared from Xiao Yan's eyes in a flash. Xiao Yan touched her slightly hot face and felt that her heartbeat accelerated for this little devil. What a shame. However, this guy Lu Xiaoqi actually dared to molest the head teacher. He was so lawless. Xiao Yan became angry from shame and blamed all her faults on Lu Xiaoqi. That's right. It's all this bastard Lu Xiaoqi's fault. Not only did he have a campus romance at such a critical moment when the college entrance examination was only 60 days away, he also dared to speak rudely to the teacher. I must find a reason to punish him severely tomorrow. Let him understand what it means to be heaven and earth. Poor Lu Xiaoqi still doesn't know what she will encounter tomorrow. At this moment, he had already run to the bottom of the teaching building, looked back at the rooftop, his expression was slightly thankful, and he patted his chest with lingering fear. It's strange, how could I suddenly be so unwise? Do you even dare to provoke Do Emperor? He touched his head and asked, is it possible that I have finally reached the stage of hormonal development? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 103. After a busy day, Lu Xiaoqi returned home and was greeted by Lu Wanyi's smiling face. Lu Xiaoqi said deliberately, "Hey, sister, what good thing happened, are you so happy?" Lu Wanyi said happily, "A big customer came to Ansong today. She bought all my works in one go. She also praised my embroidery skills and gave me an extra tip." "What luck?" "Oh, really?" Lu Xiaoqi's eyes were full of endearment, and her gentle and watery gaze almost overflowed from her eyes. "How can there be so much good luck always surrounding you?" "Silly sister. That's obviously the actor I hired." At this moment, all the embroidery sold by Lu Wanyi was silent in Lu Xiaoqi's storage ring, becoming a secret that could not be told. "With such good luck today, I must celebrate and reward myself." Lu Wanyi frowned and clasped her hands together. "I killed an old hen to make soup. Later, Xiaoqi, you have to drink 2 more bowls. Look at you, you've lost weight due to hunger recently. Your face has become so white, you can't even see the blood." Lu Xiaoqi. "Elder sister. Is there a possibility that this is because I have successfully cultivated and automatically opened up my beauty? That's as white as jade, flawless. Sister, you should eat more. You are the one who should replenish your body the most." But no matter what, Lu Xiaoqi still expressed that she was very happy that this silly sister finally took the road and knew how to buy some supplements. "Okay. Of course my sister knows. And I need you to teach me." Lu Wanyi glared at Lu Xiaoqi. "I am." "You are the sister," Lu Xiaoqi interrupted her and looked at Lu Wanyi with a smile. Begging for a beating, Lu Wanyi raised her hand symbolically to hit Lu Xiaoqi, but he grabbed her hand in his palm. Touching her sister's soft and boneless, slender white wrist, Lu Xiaoqi had indescribable pity in her eyes. "Sister, you have lost weight recently. Why don't you go out these days and take good care of yourself at home? Anyway, in a few days, it will be." "No," Lu Wanyi rolled her eyes at him, "I don't make money, you support me." "I support you." Lu Xiaoqi almost blurted out. He had the urge to confess everything, but he calmed down at the critical moment and thought about what Zhao Xueqing said before. Professor Wang, who was at the Riao level, seemed to be delayed for something, and it would take 2 days before he could come. He endured it, but his small impatience messed up his big plans. He is not sure that he can cure his sister's illness now. And with my sister's current physical condition, I don't know how angry she would be if she learned that she didn't listen to her and became an adventurer. Don't let your body become angry before the disease is cured. It's better to wait until her illness is cured and then tell everything. When Lu Wanyi hummed a song and went into the kitchen to work, Lu Zioqi came to Haitantu. Haitantu She was a little listless. Even if his master was in front of him, he couldn't cheer up. He just raised his eyebrows and glanced at Lu Zioqi. Hanging out with brother Lu will make you hungry for 9 meals in 3 days. Although the food cooked by Lu Wanyi is delicious, the portion is too small. It eats all the leftovers eaten by ordinary people every day, which cannot satisfy its daily needs. If it were not born extraordinary and can absorb the energy of the world to supplement itself, it would probably starve to death. Lu Zioqi also knew that the treatment of the bodyguard he had arranged for his sister was a bit too bad. He touched Haitantu's head awkwardly and took out a handful of fine pills. Here, let's replenish it first. After 2 days, I'll go see if there is any special food for pets. I'll give it to you in due time. Haitantiu stuck out his tongue, swallowed all the fine pills in Lu Zioqi's hand, and smacked his lips, feeling a little unsatisfied. Tasteless. The food cooked by the owner is delicious. It's a pity that I just can't resist hunger. Why? Those that resist hunger are tasteless, while those that are delicious do not resist hunger. It's so frustrating. There is a way to have both ends of the world, live up to your words and live up to your stomach. Every move it made was truthfully reported to its owner, Lu Zioqi. He glanced at the black charcoal head who was gradually showing his foodie attributes and gave him a shock. Behave better. The benefits will certainly come from you. Haitantu held his head and protested against his master's mistreatment of him. It is now clinging to its master's thigh, becoming more and more arrogant, and has a tendency to ignore Lu Zioqi. But how could Lu Zioqi tolerate it? Get started directly and use the Hunyuan Zingi Imen method. Knead, grab, squeeze. Haitantu told Master Lu to stop pressing the button. Hair loss. Under Lu Zioqi's continuous ravages, it finally succumbed to his forceful suppression and showed a flattering look. I really don't take the master seriously, I take him seriously. That's right. Woof woof. That night, Lu Zioqi took out several passive skills books that Zhao Sueking had given him during the day, and with a clap of his hand, he had learned them all. Although his current skill bar is endless, there are only 10 unlocked, 2 were damaged after learning passive, and the skills he has already learned occupy 3, Reversal Counterattack Blade Storm 4 Pole's Power. There are only 7 skill slots available now. After learning new skills this time, he only has 2 empty skill slots left. But he has already obtained the skill column unlocking scroll from Zhao Sueking. Now is the time to find out where the limits of Kongkong's thing are. Lu Zioqi took out the skill bar unlock scroll and started using it. The 13th skill bar is successfully unlocked by consuming 1 scroll. The 14th skill bar is successfully unlocked by consuming 2 scrolls. The 15th skill bar is successfully unlocked by consuming 4 scrolls. The 16th skill bar is successfully unlocked by consuming 8 scrolls. Until the 8th block skill bar was unlocked, that is, Lu Zioqi's 20th skill bar, no matter how many scrolls Lu Zioqi used, the skill bar would not move at all. It seems that the limit of unlocking scrolls in this skill bar is 8. That's right, normal people only have 9 skill bars in total. Excluding the unlocked skill bars that come with them, using scrolls can only unlock 8 at most. It's a pity that this doesn't apply to Lu Zioqi. Lu Zioqi pouted, this scroll is really rubbish. Not useful at all. Then start the next step now. Fengling Yueying, give me a promotion. The next moment, Lu Zioqi's skill panel transformed magnificently, completely changing its appearance. The way of the drifter plus the way of hunting rightward arrow, the true meaning of wind control rightward arrow, the way of flying swordsmanship. Soul Reaper rightward arrow hell curse. Guardian of the stars rightward arrow guardian of the stars. Hymn singing rightward arrow hymn praise. The following is the number of words other than the 2000 word main text, so don't call me stupid. Phaeton Yukendo, rating SSS. Level, upward arrow. Your own critical hit chance is doubled, and the excess critical hit chance is automatically converted into critical hit damage. Every 5% of the critical hit chance after exceeding 100% is converted into 1% of critical hit damage. Accumulate a layer of shield when moving. The shield will be automatically triggered when damage is received and a value equal to the damage will be deducted. The shield has no upper limit and can be stacked by moving. Each attack will cause a certain amount of real damage. Real damage ignores defense. Skill attacks are accompanied by critical hit effect. After a group attack triggers a critical hit, the critical hit damage is reduced by 20%. When the critical hit effect is triggered, the true damage of the attack is additionally increased. Characteristics: endless critical strikes, crippling strikes, mana conversion, divine sword master selection, flying flow slash, flowing heart residual. Consumption. Cooldown dash. Combined passive skills, completed. Features detailed explanation. Endless critical hit. After entering the battle, you will get 20% critical hit initially, and an additional 1% critical hit for each attack. There is no upper limit for stacking and lasts until 2400s after the battle ends. Crippling strike. Damage dealt to an enemy cannot be recovered. Mana conversion. The activated shield value will be converted into own mana at a ratio of 10:1, cannot exceed the mana limit. Divine Sword Master choosing. When using sword weapons, the requirements are reduced by 50%, and the weapon cannot be snatched. Flying slash. When using sword skills to attack from the sky to the ground, the damage will be doubled, and there is a certain chance of ignoring defense, shield, and blocking skills. Lu Xin can, before making a move, accumulate strength. When releasing the skill for the first time, the skill power will increase by 100% minus 500%, depending on the accumulation time. Hell's Curse, rating SSS. Level, upward arrow. Harvest nearby souls to permanently strengthen yourself. Each point of soul can provide 1 point of defense and 1 point of attack, invalid for targets with too large a strength difference. Every 100 points of soul provide an additional 1% of attack speed, movement speed, and release speed. Every 500 soul points provides an additional 1% hit rate, attack distance, and critical hit chance. Every 1000 soul points provides an additional point of damage saving throw and abnormal status resistance. Characteristics: Hell's Desire, Soul Contract, Unequal Exchange. Consumption. Cooldown dash. Features detailed explanation. Desire of Hell. You are the person that all hells desire. They covet your soul. At the same time, you also get their gifts, and you can see more things with your eyes. Soul Contract. The souls harvested by you are forcibly enslaved by you and have to dedicate their soul power to you. It will protect you on the soul level. Unequal Exchange. With a one-time payment of 100,000 soul points, you can designate any object to be resurrected and dominate the other person's will. A complete body is required. Guardian of the Stars, rating B. Level, upward arrow. Call the power of starlight to heal teammates. The maximum number of targets is 5, and restore 20% at 847, affected by mental strength, health for all targets. Features: Starlight Power, Mana Surge, Galaxy Tide. Consumption: 3500 mana. Cooldown dash. Features detailed explanation. Starlight Power, the maximum number of healing targets increased by 3. Mana Surge, each time healing is completed, the own mana recovery speed increases by 10%, lasting 2400s. Galaxy Tide, the treatment range and amount of treatment are based on the starry sky when released. with an additional 10% minus 50% blessing. The brighter the starlight, the better the treatment effect. Him, rating B. Level, upward arrow. Bless your teammates with divine power, and the group will recover physical and spiritual energy, up to 8 people, the smaller the number, the better the effect, lasting 2400s. Features, slow healing, weapon blessing, badge of honor. Consumption, 4500 mana. Cooldown dash. Features detailed explanation. Slow healing, teammates blessed with divine power can speed up their own injury recovery. Weapon blessing, during the duration of the skill, the blessed target's weapon will have sacred attributes and its attack will be increased. Emblem of honor, during the duration of the skill, any damage caused by the blessed target to the enemy will be converted into 5% of the healing amount to restore the blessed target's injuries. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 104. As the skill bar suddenly shattered, Luzioki's skill bar once again only had 16 unlocked positions left. The first 5 are Reverse Counterattack, Bladestorm, Power of the Four-Pole, Guardian of the Stars, and Praise of Hymns. Except for Power of the Four-Pole, the other 4 are it is a B-rated skill. In fact, Luzioki could just grit his teeth and upgrade all his skills to an A rating. But this will cause a very serious problem. His current mana is only over 100,000, specific value, 135,000, and 1 4-pole's power will take up nearly half, 5W. The remaining MP can support him to release 1 skill at most. This means that every time he releases a skill, he has to meditate and recover for half a day before he can release the next one. This is simply too embarrassing. Not to mention that with Luzioki's current attack support, he is basically invincible to those below Rieo and above are playing with the rules, and simple numerical values have little effect on them. Therefore, even if Luzioki upgrades his skills to A, he should still be unable to do anything about others. It doesn't matter whether you upgrade or not. Unless Luzioki can break the boat, upgrade all his skills to SSS+, and have the power to break the rules, just like his passive, turn it into his own use. But this will bring up another very embarrassing problem. It can be upgraded, but can Luzioki use it? He can't use it at all. It's like a child holding a sledgehammer, looking at it to bluff people, but can't swing it, so what's the use? Besides, Luzioki's talent in terms of combat effectiveness is based on skills. What about instant spell casting, unlimited upgrades, no CD for skills, invincibility when released? These have been repaired, and even the skills that have not yet been repaired have no consumption, skill double attack, skill instant kill, etc. It's all about skills. When Luzioki upgrades his skills to SSS+, breaks the barriers of skills, gets rid of the constraints and becomes part of his own abilities, can he still enjoy these? Obviously he can't enjoy it anymore. If possible, then his passiveness should be able to continue to be upgraded, unlimited skill upgrades. After disappearing from the skill bar, the natural ability has no effect on it. It is obviously considered that it no longer belongs to the category of skills. Breaking free from the constraints of a skill bar is a double-edged sword. Although it will break the limitations that Luzioki may face, such as skill silence like Laobai, or more simply deprivation of skills, it will also cause Luzioki to lose the bonus of his natural ability. To further change the situation, the answer can only be found after Luzioki becomes stronger and finds opportunities to further compensate for her talent. Author, I have filled this pit, please don't carry it anymore. 2 days have passed, and the colonel still hasn't called him back, which makes Luzioki, who is living a peaceful life, feel a haze in his heart. Unable to contact the military forces, my trump card is -1. But the good news is that Zhao Xueqing sent him a message back. Tomorrow afternoon, Professor Wang will arrive in Chengdu. The opportunity to cure my sister's illness is just around the corner. At the same time, Zhao Xueqing also brought news of a brand new copy to Lu Zhaoqi. A copy of the Disaster Dimension. This copy is also a special copy. The normal copy Lu Zhaoqi is not interested at all now. After all, with endless resources, he is almost in a supreme state of having no desires or desires. Cultivation resources, 999 plus. Material consumables, 999 plus. Mythical equipment, durable infinity. Strength, I am invincible under the sun, and I am invincible under the sun. When you lift your pants, you are tough.jpg. Why do you think he still downloaded the copy? Just enter the retirement stage in advance and avoid the 50-year detour. But this copy is different. The drops it produces are several special materials that cannot be traded. Dimensional breath, green. Cannot be traded, soul-bound. Give the designated equipment additional resonance attributes. 2 pieces of equipment consume 1 breath, and each additional piece of equipment consumes an additional breath. The success rate is related to the compatibility between the equipment. Dimensional breath, red. Cannot be traded, soul-bound. Grant designated equipment to strengthen, so that random entries can be strengthened. Enhancement: add 1 consumes 1 breath, add 2 consumes 2 breaths, and so on. The probability of strengthening each breath is fixed at 50%, multiplied, which means the first strengthening is successful. The probability is 50%, the second time is 25%, the third time is 12.5%. Dimensional breath, blue. Cannot be traded, soul-bound. Change the entry specified by the equipment. The changed attributes will be random. There is no upper limit for the number of changes, but each change will consume a certain amount of equipment durability. What? Is the equipment creation system out? Speaking of this, Lu Zhaoqi doesn't feel sleepy anymore. As the saying goes, wealth can be found in danger. Give it a try and turn your bicycle into a motorcycle. Lu Zhaoqi plans to dye this thing, equipment, green directly. Then roll the dice one by one to get the best attributes, and finally give it an enhancement of add 10,086. If it weren't for the impossibility of trading, Lu Zhaoqi would be gearing up for it even now. Obviously, Zhao Xueqing should have already obtained her specially customized equipment, so she invited Lu Zhaoqi to go to the dungeon with her to collect materials to build equipment. Obviously, Zhao Xueqing is the kind of arrogant and domineering boss, exuding a charm that Lu Zhaoqi can't resist. We will meet tomorrow to discuss in detail. Lu Zhaoqi immediately typed out this text message seriously and sent it immediately. Lu Zhaoqi, ahem, let me tell you first, it's not because we are interested in this. My materials are 999 plus, do I care about this? Mainly in terms of treating Lu Wanyi, we owe her a huge favor and promise to be on call whenever needed. That's why I can't refuse. Don't go around talking nonsense and ruining the reputation of someone like me, Lu. I, Lu Zhaoqi, am not a dog gambler. Not even a dog licker. Early on Tuesday morning, Lu Zhaoqi stepped into the classroom with her small school bag on her back and the bell ringing. Unexpectedly, Xiao Yan had already crossed her arms and blocked him at the door with a sneer on her face. Lu Zhaoqi. Those who come are not kind and those who are kind will not come. Lu Zhaoqi shuddered and subconsciously stood at attention. Here we come. Get out and stand. Amid everyone's gloating eyes, Xiao Yan pointed to the door and shouted softly to Lu Zhaoqi. Why? Could it be because I walked into the classroom with my left foot first? Lu Zhaoqi looked innocent. Stop pretending. Are you addicted to being a bell-treading prince? Xiao Yan snorted, stared at him and said, I will teach you a lesson today. Lu Zhaoqi shrank her neck, knowing in her heart that Xiao Yan's anger from yesterday was still lingering, so she didn't dare to refute, so she went to stand outside obediently. In fact, Xiaoyan is usually very nice to her classmates, and she doesn't have the airs of a class teacher, otherwise Lu Xiaoqi would not dare to scream at her sister Yan. Although the school has long stipulated that students must come to the classroom 20 minutes early for morning reading every morning from Monday to Friday, Xiaoyan sympathizes with their hard work and has always turned a blind eye to stepping on the bell. Today I just used this as an excuse to deal with this little villain who made me hate him so much. As the uniform morning reading began in the classroom, Lu Xiaoqi and Xiaoyan outside the door began to stare at each other. The two were awkward for more than 10 minutes. Xiaoyan couldn't help but feel soft when she saw Lu Xiaoqi's pitiful look. She wondered if it was a little too much to cause trouble for him like this. So he asked in a low voice, "Do you know you are wrong?" Lu Xiaoqi nodded quickly, "I know I was wrong. If you dare to tease the teacher again next time, let's see if I don't." Xiaoyan raised her small fist and shook it. Her angry look was surprisingly cute. Lu Xiaoqi's heart was filled with excitement, and she nodded quickly, "I was wrong, I was wrong. But I will dare next time." "Then go in." Xiaoyan paused and then said, "Don't tell others." Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 105. Just after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Lu Xiaoqi rushed out of the classroom like a galloping wild horse. He's out of school again. This time, he and Zhao Xueqing did not have an underground meeting on campus. They chose the training ground outside the school. "You won't be caught by Xiaoyan this time, right?" The two met at the entrance of the Weiyuan training ground and smiled at each other. "Ah! What a good Zhao Xueqing. You were not upright yesterday," Lu Xiaoqi muttered, "when you saw the head teacher coming, you actually left me and ran away. You don't talk about friendship at all. I'm not your comrade in arms, what are you talking about friendship?" "I'm just a little girl," Zhao Xueqing imitated Lu Xiaoqi, put her hands on her hips, raised her head and snorted, "Only women and villains have a hard time keeping up with each other. Don't you understand?" Lu Xiaoqi's eyes widened, "Is this how you understand this sentence?" Zhao Xueqing made a pun, "Isn't it?" Lu Xiaoqi tilted her head and thought for a moment, then said with a speechless expression, "Good guy. So you're here to scold me. Only women and villains are difficult to raise." The original meaning is that children become difficult to discipline when they get close to villains. Now it is misinterpreted by many people to mean that women and children are difficult to raise, implying that women are as ignorant as children, a kind of machismo. The taste of. No matter what Zhao Xueqing meant, she was implicitly scolding Lu Xiaoqi. The former implied that Lu Xiaoqi was a villain, because the woman was referring to Zhao Xueqing, who was hanging out with him when she was caught by Xiaoyan, which meant that Lu Xiaoqi was a scoundrel. Xiaoqi is a villain. The latter scolded Lu Xiaoqi for being chauvinistic, thinking that Zhao Xueqing, a little girl, is not easy to get along with. As soon as these words came out, he had a full 18 years of skill. Even if Lu Xiaoqi and Ye Wen were still alive, he would have to move around for a while to dispel this fist power. He changed the subject and asked, "By the way, what is the copy you sent me about yesterday?" "I knew you would ask." Zhao Xueqing snorted and took out a piece of information from her bag, ready to hand it to Lu Xiaoqi. "Here." Before Lu Xiaoqi could catch it, another person snatched it away. This person is Xiaoyan. This time it was really not a coincidence. After Lu Xiaoqi and Zhao Xueqing were caught by Xiaoyan yesterday, she kept a close eye on them and secretly paid attention to their movements. Seeing the two of them leaving school one after another, he quietly followed Zhao Xueqing's whereabouts, like a dean secretly catching students surfing the internet, gearing up to wipe out any possible romance between the two. Really? They were caught in the training field not far outside the school. This time, everyone came and got all the stolen goods. However, it was slightly different from what she imagined. Although the two were chatting and laughing, they still maintained a distance, not like the intimacy when they were passionately in love. And what Zhao Xueqing handed to Lu Xiaoqi was. She glanced at the title of the information and narrowed her eyes, detailed guide to the disaster dimension. Difficult level copy. She raised her voice, you two actually secretly researched and passed the difficult level dungeon behind my back. Are you crazy? Are you going to die? You two are only in the astral stage. Can you keep your feet on the ground? Is the difficult level dungeon accessible to you? This is a dungeon that all Moonlight level adventurers must form a team with. Zhao Xueqing. Lu Xiaoqi. The two looked at each other, both a little embarrassed. That, class teacher, you may not believe it, but we have actually teamed up to play a difficult dungeon once. P.S. Xiao Yan doesn't know the changes in Lu Xiaoqi's strength, and her impression of him is still at the stage of clearing the fog dungeon, so don't scold her for being nosy. Even if you want to scold her, do it gently. Lu Xiaoqi. Don't think that just because we got through the difficult level of the fog dungeon by chance, you will be able to expand. Think about it for yourself. If I hadn't been in front to help you resist damage, would you have been able to withstand an attack from the boss? And you? Zhao Xueqing. You come from a good family, you have good skills, and your equipment should be pretty good, but you also have to think about Lu Xiaoqi. How dare he accompany you when he has 3 melons and 2 dates? Crazy. If something goes wrong, who can take the responsibility? Xiao Yan's mood at the moment can be described as mixed emotions. Good news, these two are really not in a relationship. Bad news, they are planning to commit suicide by playing a hard level dungeon. Then I would rather they fall in love. The worst case scenario is that I won't stop you. Even if you fall in love and suffer a blow in the end, at least your life is still alive. You may not be able to come back alive as a dungeon after leapfrogging to a lower level. You are not lucky enough and you can't even find all the bodies. Xiao Yan was so angry that her chest was rising and falling, and she felt that her size had grown a lot. She put her hands on her hips and looked at these two little devils who were fearless. The key was that of these two people, one had an expressionless face and the other had an innocent face. They were not aware of their mistakes at all. Instead, the two are still communicating, through their eyes. Lu Xiaoqi, what should we do now? You should say something. Zhao Xueqing, don't panic. Hold on, watch my face. Lu Xiaoqi looked at Zhao Xueqing's expressionless, cold face, and silently typed a question mark. I also want to see your expression, so why don't you give me a look? The atmosphere at the scene was extremely embarrassing. At this moment, a rapid siren sounded over the city, and the harsh sound reached all areas of the city instantly. It chimes for 15 seconds, pauses for 5 seconds, chimes again for 15 seconds, repeats 3 times, and finally stops suddenly. All 3 people were shocked by it. This is Monster Siege Alert. The so-called Monster Siege is a disaster when monsters in the dungeon appear in the real city and cause damage to the surroundings. Because monsters that appear in reality will, without exception, lose their minds and fall into a violent mode, madly attacking the creatures he can see around him, seeming to hate and envy all life in reality. After many disasters, Dragon Kingdom has formulated corresponding policies for this situation. Each city has established emergency shelters and issued corresponding regulations. In the face of such an emergency, the elderly, the weak, the sick and the disabled can be given priority in emergency shelters, followed by teenagers and finally the elderly. And those who have used national resources to awaken their talents must unconditionally obey the arrangements of the relevant departments at this moment, even if they are on the front line. This is like filling in the small hole in front. The adventurers in the city, no matter who they are, even the children of aristocratic families, must also obey the orders and kill the monsters in the city. No one will be exempted, and offenders will be punished depending on the seriousness of the case, up to and including immediate execution. Of course, relevant regulatory authorities will also strictly supervise the implementation of relevant departments and resolutely put an end to any bending of the law and abuse of power for personal gain. When the alarm sounded that was confirmed to be a monster attacking the city, Zhao Xueqing was okay, but she frowned and looked a little solemn. Lu Xiaoqi's expression had completely changed. Xiao Yan also had a serious look on her face and said cautiously, "Zhao Xueqing, you and Lu Xiaoqi come with me to report to the relevant departments. At this time, let's put aside the previous dungeon matters." Eh? Where is Lu Xiaoqi? Xiao Yan turned around and saw Zhao Xueqing with a dull look on her face, and couldn't help but asked in confusion. Zhao Xueqing was so shocked that she could not speak coherently and could only point to the air. "Fly, fly." "What? Flying?" Xiao Yan was also confused. Following the direction Zhao Xueqing pointed, she saw a figure vaguely similar to Lu Xiaoqi, passing through the upper air of the city, turning into a small dot and disappearing. "Xiao Yan. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 106. Over the city, a hurried figure would pass by from time to time, and occasionally flying monsters would appear, but they would be intercepted by adventurers in the blink of an eye. During special periods, the city's air ban has also been lifted. Lu Xiaoqi's whole body exploded with electric arcs, and the wind surrounded him. He had activated the wind form of 4 poles. When he moved at high speed, his whole body turned into a blurry shadow, as if he was blending into the wind. Sprinting with all his strength, in just a few minutes, he saw the familiar small yard. Fortunately, although the people around seemed to be in a hurry because they heard the alarm of monsters attacking the city, this area is not the hardest hit area, and no monsters have appeared yet. Lu Xiaoqi just breathed a sigh of relief, and then her whole body was slammed into her yard by the inertia. Boom! Lu Wanyi, who was a little worried about her brother's safety, was holding Haitan too worriedly, preparing to go out and join the others to the shelter. She was startled by the sudden movement and thought some monster had fallen into her yard. My sister covered her little heart that was about to jump out. Just as she was about to turn around and run away, she heard a very familiar voice coming from the smoke, "Bah, bah, bah." I almost landed on my face and swallowed a mouthful of mud. Lu Xiaoqi wiped the mud off his body with a look of embarrassment and stood up from the human-shaped pit in the center of the yard. "Xiaoqi," Lu Wanyi was confused, "why are you here?" "It's too late to explain so much, sister." Lu Xiaoqi took a few steps to Lu Wanyi and took her hand, "Come with me quickly." With that said, Lu Xiaoqi snatched the black charcoal head from Lu Wanyi's arms, threw it out by the back of her neck, and shouted, "Little Hiza, transform!" Roar! With a powerful roar, with Lu Wanyi's stunned expression, Heitantu released his mimicry disguise for the first time and returned to his true form. A huge black dragon with a slightly childish face appeared in front of the two of them. He gently leaned down and lowered his head. With a flick of his tail, the wall of the Lu family courtyard was destroyed by it. Lu Xiaoqi's face darkened. "This loss will be deducted from your food expenses." "Haitantio, can you blame me? It's not like this yard is too small." "Wronged. Sister, let me help you up first." Lu Xiaoqi took her sister's hand and was about to take her to the back of the black dragon's neck. Lu Xiaoqi, my sister finally understood and her expression changed. "You." For a moment, she was so choked that she couldn't speak. Lu Wanyi was not a fool. When she saw this majestic dragon, she knew that her brother had probably hidden it from her and had achieved extraordinary results as an adventurer. She should obviously feel aggrieved and angry because her brother, whom she had worked so hard to bring up, deceived her on such a big matter. But she was more afraid in her heart, because the path of an adventurer meant a narrow escape from death, and it was even more difficult for civilian adventurers to die well. As long as she thought that there was even a 1 in 10,000 chance that her brother would follow the same path as his parents and end up with no one alive, no dead body, and no news at all, her heart began to twitch violently. Although she is not an unreasonable person, she knows that in this critical moment, she should not have a little temper with her brother here. After all, her life is at stake. How can she be so willful at this time? But at this moment, her body was so unsatisfactory, her thoughts were surging, and her emotions were ups and downs, and it was actually difficult to move. Luzaoki saw that her sister's expression was changing unpredictably and her breathing became difficult. How could she not know that her sister's mood swings were too violent, causing physical discomfort? This was the reason why he had never dared to confess to his sister. Once he rashly confessed the matter to his sister, with her character, even if she didn't blame herself, she didn't know what kind of illness would come out of her body just because she was sulking alone, so he might as well stabilize her sister first. Let's wait until her body is cured. When Luzaoki saw his sister's current appearance, he was so frightened that he almost flew away. He quickly hugged his sister into his arms. Sister, don't be angry. Zioki knows that he was wrong. Xiaoqi will never dare to deceive my sister again. Just this once, forgive Xiaoqi's willfulness, okay? Sister, how are you feeling now? Are you feeling better? Under her brother's repeated words of comfort, Lu Wanyi tried her best to calm down her emotions, with a blush on her face. She took 2 big breaths and said in a harsh voice, Zioki, don't worry about my body and leave first. It's not safe here. How could you not care? Everything I do is to protect you. My sister. Lu Zioki's heart felt at peace. He held his sister in his arms and calmed down completely. He said gently, don't worry, sister, as long as I am here, nothing can hurt you. Lu Wanyi held Lu Zioki's chest with her hands, not caring about sulking with her brother. Her heart had not recovered from the rapid beating just now, and she gasped slightly, let's go. The community has just informed us to evacuate. Okay, Lu Zioki obediently followed her sister's words, hugged her sister in a princess hug, and lightly jumped to Haitantio, let's go. After signing a pet contract, Lu Zioki and Heitantu can be said to have a spiritual connection. They can understand what the other person wants to express even with a look without unnecessary movements. At this moment, it understood the instructions conveyed by its master, flapped its wings, flew into the air, and rushed towards the shelter. Lu Zioki naturally didn't care as the biting wind howled by, but he was afraid that his sister's body would not be able to withstand the stimulation, so he turned his magic power into a thick wall of air, wrapping the 2 of them and isolating everything outside. This is also one of the benefits of the Golden Core Cultivator. People in this world have no magic power. Before the Rieo level, there is no way to release their mental and physical strength, let alone perform arbitrary operations like Lu Zioki's. Lu Zioki had to put his sister in place first, so that he could free up his hands and kill everyone. Such a large black dragon soared into the sky and immediately attracted the attention of relevant departments. Don't ask why Lu Zioki doesn't fly on his own. As I said before, he can fly, but he won't stop. Warning. A monster similar to a dragon appears in the Z48 area of the West City. It is initially determined to be in the middle stage of Moonlight. Please ask the nearest Tianhe Adventure Group to intercept it as soon as possible. Tianhe Adventure Group received it, please reply. The Tianhe Adventure Group has been received, a middle-aged uncle replied in the headset, and said to the other 2 members of the Adventure Group, let's go. We are going to be dragon-slaying warriors this time. The strength of the 3 of them is not bad. The leader of the uncle is in the middle stage of Moonlight, and the other 2 have also entered the early stage of Moonlight. This strength is already ahead of 80% of the local adventure groups. Most adventure groups are not even in the stage of Moonlight. There are no adventurers of this level. None of the three showed fear. With the experience and equipment they had accumulated over the years, 3 against 1 was more than enough to deal with a monster whose strength had reached the middle stage of Moonlight. Unless this is a Lord monster. But obviously it is unlikely that it is a Lord monster, because if it is a Lord monster, it can break through the copy and appear outside, and its strength will not only be in the middle stage of Yuehui, so it has to start at least Sun Yao. The 3 of them jumped into the air and flew in the direction prompted by the headset. Sure enough, a huge monster was soon discovered flying in mid-air. Hey! Monster, where are you running? Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 107. Hey! Monster, where are you running? One of the slim and capable adventurers shouted loudly and raised his hand to attack. But I heard a clear male voice coming from the other side. Wait a minute, you 3. I am a good citizen. The skinny adventurer slapped his hands and almost flashed his waist. The 3 of them took a closer look and realized that there was actually a boy holding a girl standing on the back of the dragon. The other adventurer seemed to be in his 60s, but he was still in good spirits. When he saw Luzaoki flying on the back of a dragon with his sister in his arms, he couldn't help but sigh. Fuck. This young man. But the 3 of them breathed a sigh of relief. It turned out to be one of their own. After all, such a big monster actually puts a lot of pressure on people. Long way. If you can avoid fighting, it's best not to fight. Fighting will kill you, and you will be more harmonious. Which adventure group are you from? Why haven't I seen you before? What's going on with this monster? The middle-aged uncle asked first. This is my pet. I don't have an adventure group yet, Luzaoki replied briefly. I want to send my relatives to the shelter, and I hope it will be convenient for the 3 of you. The middle-aged uncle glanced at Lu Wanyi and found that she obviously looked wrong and seemed to be ill. Is this little girl an ordinary person? Yes, she is my sister, Luzaoki replied. The middle-aged man nodded, pressed the headset and said, the Tianhe adventure group applies to lift the warning. The summon of the biological adventurer has been found. Please answer when you receive it. Headquarters has received it. After receiving the reply, the middle-aged man turned around and said to Luzaoki, after sending people off, please report to the relevant departments as soon as possible. The current situation is not optimistic. In the executive conference room in the center of the city. Sitting in the darkness was a large group of personnel from relevant departments. The large screen directly in front of the conference room showed a situation similar to radar detection. A large number of red dots appeared in the area west of the city. There are countless surveillance screens next to the big screen, and various monsters appear in the video surveillance. They seem to be irrationally starting to wreak havoc on the city. Are you ready? The city's top executive turned his back to the screen and looked seriously at the relevant department personnel sitting below. Ready, everyone replied in unison, and the atmosphere was solemn. Activate the mirror barrier. The mirror barrier is activated. The staff of the relevant departments quickly started operating. 10%, 30%, 70%, activation completed. A light blue shockwave swept through the entire city, but it did not cause damage to anything. Even except for people with awakened talents, ordinary people were not aware of this shockwave. Notice, attack immediately. Intercept the monster. Yes. In every corner of the city, countless soldiers who have registered with relevant departments and have come from other areas are standing ready. With weapons distributed in their hands, they form teams and rush towards the monsters. The first echelon of police officers from relevant departments showed determination on their faces and rushed towards the monster with weapons in hand. The second echelon is composed of forces from major adventure groups. Most of them come from civilian families. At this moment, Facing the danger of monsters, they do not flinch and charge forward. The third echelon is the major families, the children of aristocratic families. The last echelon is composed of reservists and people who have enjoyed state support and awakened talents. They are the last line of defense between monsters and ordinary people. Most of the monsters that can break through the dungeon and enter reality are not weak, at least at the moonlight level. Even if they lose their minds at this moment, for most people who only have starlight or lower, they are undoubtedly at the big boss level. Exist. When adventurers form a team to attack monsters, both parties will be pulled into the mirror boundary. In this barrier, although the scene has not changed, any damage caused inside will not affect the outside of the barrier, equivalent to automatically generating a small copy. What happens in the copy will not affect the outside world, but the scene is the same as outside. There are only two ways to remove this barrier: 1. The releaser takes the initiative to cancel the barrier, 2. Only one of the two parties fighting inside is left. It is worth mentioning that ordinary people will not be pulled into the barrier because they are not affected by the dungeon props. Charge, the leader of the bearded adventure group shouted, charging towards a 3-meter tall stone giant. The moment he came into contact with the stone giant, the members of the adventure group who had signed a teammate contract with him were pulled together. Enter the boundary. Special Forces. Everyone on alert. Captain Lee and his Special Forces members were naturally involved in the city defense battle. Most of their team members already had Yuehui level strength, so their goals were required to be close to a super monster with sun level strength, alienized salamander. As one of the archers hit the left eye of the salamander that was wreaking havoc on the surrounding environment with an arrow, the two sides were pulled into the barrier battlefield. This lizard, which seems to have part of the blood of a giant dragon, has grown wings. However, compared to its huge body, these relatively small wings are not enough for it to fly, but when the wings are opened and closed, it can also fly. The improvement in its speed is also very significant. Hiss. It stared at the intact eye on the right side, spat out the carbonized things in its mouth, covered itself in flames, and rushed towards the crowd with heavy steps. The team member responsible for the long-range special operations team immediately activated their skills to restrict the salamander's movements. Countless golden bright lights formed a star array, trapping the salamander within it. 6-stick light prison. The strong holy attributes begin to cause damage to the monster's skin. Attack. Captain Lee did not take it lightly just because the monster was restrained. Guo Ziyi's face still retained enough caution as he issued the order in a deep voice. Suddenly, the wind suddenly rose, the thunder roared, and the heavy rain mixed with ice all struck at the salamander that was struggling crazily on the spot. Several melee teammates, using the cover of distant attacks, launched a second round of offensive against salamander with weapons. Click. The mirror space was broken, and the Special Forces team reappeared in reality. Team Lee's headset had just restored contact when he heard the commander's voice shouting from inside, X-246 area of West City. There is a monster with peak Yuehui strength heading east. Move. Go and stop it? Yes, Captain Lee replied, turned around and shouted, Special Forces team, obey orders. Head east. On the other side, hundreds of ordinary people who received the emergency notification were evacuating in an orderly manner under the escort of more than a dozen personnel from relevant departments. Sudden. A roar came out, and several large flying beasts landed in the crowd and started killing. No, personnel from relevant departments rushed to stop it. Several of the flying beasts were pulled into the mirror barrier with them, but there was still one flying beast that appeared last and no one could deal with it. The few remaining volunteers who had turned on their talent bar looked at each other, looking at the flying beasts wreaking havoc in the crowd, and they all showed hesitant expressions. With their strength, even if they go up, they probably won't be able to delay much, and they will only lose their lives in vain. My child! My child, a young mother cried and threw herself forward, but was desperately hugged and dragged away by the man beside her. With tears streaming down their faces and excited expressions, the two watched helplessly as their children, who were only a few steps behind, were scattered by the crowd, and finally fell into the mouth of the flying beast that suddenly rushed into the crowd. As soon as the flying beast raised its head, the still crying baby slid in along its ferocious bloody mouth. The staggered teeth closed together, and the throat rose and fell. The child's cry suddenly disappeared. When one of the volunteers saw this scene, his eyes turned red, and he gritted his teeth and rushed forward. "TNND, you stinky bastard! Drink my foot-washing water!" A stone hit the monster on the head. It shook its head and was pulled into the mirror barrier together with the volunteer. A child with mucus appeared from mid-air, fell down, and fell heavily to the ground. Volunteers immediately came forward to check and found that the child was in a coma with multiple fractures on his body, but fortunately his life was safe. "Let's go," the remaining volunteers breathed a sigh of relief and returned the child to the parents, who looked both happy and sad. They quickly turned around and shouted to everyone, "He can't hold on for long. Get out of here." The people who survived the disaster ignored their cries and howls and hurriedly followed the volunteers to retreat along the previously set route. Fortunately, the relevant departments discovered that the signals of the relevant personnel here had disappeared, and immediately knew that an accident had occurred. They immediately dispatched mobile units to respond and safely escorted the remaining people to a safe area. Global copy: My talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author: Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 108. Seeing that her mood had calmed down, her sister, who had returned to normal, hugged the black charcoal head that had been transformed into a small black dog using mimic disguise. Following the queue of people, she turned around step by step and entered the emergency shelter's defensive shield. Luzioki, who had been waving to her sister, finally breathed a sigh of relief. "My sister is safe. So good. The seal is lifted." Luzioki geared up and turned her eyes to the far corner of the city. There, a thick smoke gradually rose, as if something was wreaking havoc. Boom! Li Xiaoqian embarrassedly dodged the brute force attack of the 5-meter-tall Cyclops in front of her. A wheel slipped into the blind spot of the monster's field of vision. She took the opportunity to slip to the wall, evading the Cyclops' search, and half knelt on the ground panting. Guess. The pistol in her hand that could be fatal to ordinary people was useless at this time. Li Xiaoqian looked at the monster, who was looking for her everywhere because of her poor eyesight, and felt only regret in her heart. Hateful. If I had awakened my talent back then, I wouldn't have had the slightest ability to fight back. She was born into a wealthy family and should have been able to live an ordinary and happy life without any worries. However, because of the influence of her uncle who worked in the relevant departments, she was motivated since she was a child and wanted to serve the people. She became a staff member of the relevant departments and struggled on the front line to save people from fire and water. The family objected to this, saying that this kind of beating and killing work was not suitable for a girl to do and was too dangerous, so they suggested that she find something quieter to do. But at the age of 16, she was already quite assertive. After arguing with her family, both parties chose to take a step back. Her family no longer objected to her taking the civil service examination. On this condition, she must give up unlocking her natural abilities and not do dangerous things, which translates to not getting involved with adventurers. Originally, she didn't pay much attention to whether she had any talents. After all, she only had a white talent after being detected. Even if she tried hard, she could only activate a blue talent at most. Since she is destined to not achieve any great achievements on the road of adventurer, she might as well be an ordinary person and shine in an ordinary position. That's what she thought at the time, but at the moment she only felt regret. If only I had persisted a little longer. Giving up on talent awakening is equivalent to a warrior giving up the gun in his hand. But at this moment, monsters were attacking the city, and she was originally asked by the leader, who usually took good care of her, to retreat with the ordinary people, to help the adventurers maintain the order of the escape team and enter the emergency shelter. As a result, by coincidence, a multi-eyed monster with more than a dozen eyes on its head suddenly landed in the middle of their team. This monster, with a face full of eyes, good news for trypophobia, roars and emits rays from its eyes to attack the surrounding crowd. Although she was quickly pulled into the mirror space by the accompanying adventurer, in just a short period of time, she discovered that some people were yelling and running around in order to avoid the attack of the multi-eyed monster. Stress reaction actually left the team and got separated. Volunteers and adventurers advocated abandoning them and moving on, but many of their relatives and friends in the crowd held objections. Although Li Xiaoqian cursed a lot, the responsibilities and obligations entrusted to her by the police badge on her head prevented her from abandoning the people. So she stood up at the critical moment and organized several police staff like her to search for the lost people. It was not easy to find a few people who were so frightened that they couldn't choose their way out. She was just about to follow the previous route and catch up with the large army, but she saw a huge and ferocious figure not far away. A cyclops appeared in front of them. In front of them was a monster that was 2 or 3 stories tall, and behind them were a group of ordinary people whose faces were pale with fear and whose legs were almost weak, and teammates who had no idea and were rather withdrawing. Li Xiaoqian sighed, shook her head with a wry smile, and decided to let her teammates take the few people they had just found to quickly sneak away from another road to join the main force. But he stayed to face the super monster that had been alarmed by them. In order to attract the Cyclops' attention, she resolutely took out her weapon and fired at it. Bah! Bah! The first sound is the explosion of gunpowder when the bullet comes out of the chamber, and the second sound is the sound of the bullet losing kinetic energy after hitting the monster's skin and falling to the ground. That is to say, although this shot did not cause any damage to the Cyclops, it was enough to firmly attract its hatred. It shifts the focus from the crowd to this small and delicate woman. You woman! How dare you take action against me? Very good. You successfully attracted my attention. The monster roared, raised its mace, and ran towards her with its mouth wide open. Although this Cyclops was thick-skinned and extremely powerful, fortunately, its movements were slow and its speed was slightly slower than that of a normal person. This gave her a chance to dodge attacks. However, these few rounds of pulling have exhausted her physical strength. At this moment, she can only hide in a corner of the street store, using the wall as a cover, watching the movements of the Cyclops. The Cyclops stared with a red eyeball, and there was no one around. He felt like the cooked duck could fly when it was brought to his mouth. Frustrated, it could only violently pull out the eye-catching electric lamp on the roadside, break it casually, throw it aside, beat its own chest, and let out an angry roar. After looking around for a week, the Cyclops raised his mace, transformed into a demolition officer, and started smashing everything on the street, trying to turn all the buildings into rubble. Li Xiaoqian couldn't help but shrink her neck when she looked at the miserable-looking telegraph pole lying on the ground only 3 to 5 meters away, with a few fingerprints on its twisted body and sparks coming from its buttocks. She knew that if this monster caught her now, she might be able to make a plate of cold shredded chicken just like shredded chicken. Although she was ready to sacrifice, it was human nature to be afraid of death. Who wouldn't want to live if they could avoid death? At this moment, she seemed to hear something coming. When she looked back, she was stunned. Woo! A huge hurricane coming from the sky, and the earth is rapidly advancing towards the side at the end of the street. But the miraculous thing is that although the wind is howling wherever it passes, there is no trace of damage around it. This hurricane seemed to have spiritual power and avoided all buildings. The Cyclops naturally noticed the movement, but its first reaction was to show fear and try to escape. But it's too late. Hurricane also discovered this monster. Shua! Li Xiaoqian felt that her eyes were dazzled, and there seemed to be some light flashing in front of her eyes. She turned her head, and the Cyclops turned into a white light right under her nose. To explain here, the skill effect of the new passive Hell Curse, the harvesting of souls, is invisible to ordinary people, including adventurers. Only those with special abilities will notice it. For example, Lu Xiaoqi himself has a desire for hell, and his eyes can. If I see something different, I won't repeat this matter later. He didn't even have time to trigger the mirror enchantment. This monster was inexplicably killed? What was that flying past just now? Li Xiaoqian looked back and took a closer look. Only then did I realize what kind of hurricane this was. It is clearly a huge vortex composed of small swords that are constantly rotating like a crusher. It turns out that this is actually a skill released by an adventurer. It's you. Welfare G, a somewhat familiar voice came from the whirlpool. Welfare G? What's the meaning? Li Xiaoqian was a little confused. She tentatively asked the whirlpool, "Dear adventurer, do we know each other?" A gap appeared in the sword energy, revealing Lu Xiaoqi's cheesy smiling face. "Long time no see, Officer Li." "It's you." Li Xiaoqian was a little shocked. She didn't expect that such an outrageous sword vortex was actually summoned by a high school student. Recalling the director's attitude towards him, she seemed to understand a little bit. No wonder the director nodded and bowed to him. It turns out that this guy can completely destroy the entire police station with just a raise of his hands. However, she still despises this behavior from the bottom of her heart. Snort. Poverty and lowliness cannot move, power cannot bend. You can't do this, you're not serving as the police chief. So this guy named Lu Xiaoqi, the way he looked before, was he just pretending to make fun of himself? Thinking of the face Lu Xiaoqi pretended to be at the police station, he didn't look like a strong man at all. Li Xiaoqian felt indescribably weird, and secretly cursed the shameless thief. All her original awe was gone. She struggled to get up and asked Lu Xiaoqi, "Hey. Did you see someone passing by just now?" "Oh, I saw it. There are two groups in front. One group should be a large escape group with about 100 people, and the other group only has 10 people. It is estimated that by now, the two groups have successfully merged." Lu Xiaoqi replied, then looked at Li Xiaoqian, who was in a mess, and couldn't help but ask, "Do you want me to take you there?" "Officer Li." "No. I can do it myself." Li Xiaoqian waved her hand and said to Lu Xiaoqi, "You might as well kill a few more monsters while you have this time. After killing the monsters, everyone will be safe." "Okay. Officer Li is right," Lu Xiaoqi shrugged. "Anyway, I have cleared away the monsters along the way, so there is no danger. If you move faster, you can catch up with them." "You don't have to worry about it now." Li Xiaoqian wrinkled her nose at him and walked forward with her head held high. "Yo. I can't tell that this is still a arrogant welfare girl." Lu Xiaoqi smiled and continued flying forward with Blade Storm. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy. My talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 109. Blade Storm ravaged several streets, and wherever it went, monsters turned into white light. But Lu Xiaoqi couldn't help but frown after walking around. If nothing else, the efficiency is too slow. There are at least hundreds of streets in the west of Chengdu City. At this moment, it can be said that there is smoke everywhere and continuous war. As a firefighter, he only has a high-pressure water gun, which is not enough. He tilted his head and thought for a moment, then suddenly his eyes lit up and he came up with a sexy idea, and he rushed into the sky with sword energy. Since the water gun doesn't work for this fire, then I will make it rain heavily. At this time, The executive conference room is the emergency dispatch and command center for monster siege. Alarm in the Y627 area in the west of the city. There are 3 monsters at the peak level of moonlight. Sir. The number of monsters is still increasing. We no longer have enough UAHWE level adventurers at our disposal. There are still 60% of ordinary personnel who have not yet completed the evacuation. Most people can only hide at home. Monsters have begun to invade the area north of the city. Although a monster siege warning has been issued, because the time is still short, many people still have no time to evacuate the dangerous area, not to mention that with the continuous appearance of monsters, the scope of activities is getting wider and wider, and the dangerous area is also constantly expanding. Increase. Just after Rongcheng issued the warning, it immediately asked for help from other areas. Adventurers from other cities continued to come to support, but the effect was still a drop in the bucket. The adventurers who truly have decisive strength must have at least the strength of UAHWE level or above, and there are obviously not many such adventurers who can rush over in time to provide support during their free time. Based on the 50 Moonlight adventurers in a province or city, the number of Moonlight adventurers registered nationwide is only 1,000, excluding those who may not be able to get over in a short while and those who are performing other tasks. Those who can get over are 200 to 300 people at most. Looking at the reconnaissance screen, there are dense red dots, more than 300 and still rising. The city's top executive has his hands on the bridge of his nose, a carry Yuantang emoticon package.jpg, with no expression on his face. This is it, it belongs to the classic. Let them hold on a little longer. If that doesn't work, let the volunteers delay the process. His tone was calm, without any trace of panic. The simple 4 words delaying time is an understatement, but behind it represents an extremely heavy price. When these words came out of his mouth, it meant that he was about to bear the lives of countless volunteers for this purpose. How to delay time? Naturally, they use the recruited adventurers/reserve/awakened talents with low combat power to forcefully pull the monsters that they have no chance of winning into the mirror barrier, in order to slow down the speed and damage they cause to the city. Destruction to save more ordinary lives? To put it simply, in order to save more people's lives, use the lives of volunteers to plug this hole. I have applied for assistance, and Sun Yao level adventurers are already on their way. When he arrives and wipes out the source of the siege, the remaining monsters will be easily dealt with. The executive officer looked confident on the surface, but in fact, he was extremely heavy inside at the moment. Unless it was absolutely necessary, why would he want to use his life to fill this invisible hole? If possible, he would rather just pat his ass and walk away, put these things behind him, and just be a coward. However, within the city under his jurisdiction, the number of red casualties continues to rise. This huge burden accumulated in his heart, almost making him breathless, as if the old man with white hair would collapse in the next second. But he can't back down yet. Can't fall either. Behind him stood an entire city, with the lives of millions of people in danger. Even if such a big thing happened in the city he was responsible for, his career, originally I wanted to use ZZ, but it was a sensitive word, so I just changed it so everyone can understand, has basically come to an end. Even his family was among the people who had not evacuated. Even if countless people would poke his spine afterwards and scold him for being cold-blooded and sacrificing others. Even if. But he had to shoulder such a heavy responsibility and issue such an order. Wait a minute. Sir, a staff member from the relevant department suddenly shouted excitedly, things have changed. Turn around. Appeared. The city's top executive stood up and looked at the big screen. The countless red dots that originally spread outward began to disappear in large areas. It's as if there is an invisible eraser erasing it. Quick! Call the regional surveillance, he shouted, I want to know what happened. But when they turned on the surveillance screen of the relevant area, they only saw a silent street and ruins destroyed by monsters. "Look here. It's in the air," another staff member from the relevant department shouted, and everyone's eyes turned to the screen he was pointing at. The picture taken by a drone in the middle shows a blurry figure floating in the air, and the area around him. Colorful sea of swords. The color is the effect of everything is allowed. Bladestorm. 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 Luzioki poured the recovery potion into his mouth while performing his skills. He did not stop until the consumption and recovery of sword intent were equal. Casting Bladestorm 4 times in a row triggered 2 duets of recitative of the Invisible Loner, a total of 6 times the scale. The 6 times the scale is the effect of everything is allowed -3 -9 times flying props. Take the middle value, 6, Bladestorm completely enveloped the sky. The original vortex has disappeared, replaced by a sea of sword energy suspended in mid-air. Countless sword energy circulated around him, and more sword energy turned into swimming dragons, sometimes diving into the sea of swords, sometimes leaping into the air. Luzioki has basically lost control of the sword energy. He can only roughly control the entire sea of swords, spread it as far as possible in the sky, and cover as much of the city below as possible, but when it comes to detailing each sword energy, there is really nothing he can do. It's like a person can control his arms, and even fingers, but he absolutely cannot clearly control every hair of his body. But he doesn't need to control it. There is this sentence in the skill description of Bladestorm. The evil breaking sword chi will automatically cause damage to surrounding monsters. My sword energy is fully automatic. Unexpected.jpg. Readers are encouraged to upload the pictures themselves. And how far is the specific judgment around? The answer is the attack distance of sword energy. This means that as long as you are within the attack range of the sword energy, all the sword energy will automatically attack the monster. Coupled with the 50-fold increase in attack distance of all things allowed and the double increase of 30% skill attack distance and 30% skill attack range of the short sword. This attack distance can be directly measured in kilometers. Coupled with Luzioki's continuous release of skills, the range of Bladestorm was forcibly expanded. The sword energy that originally spread could only cover a small area, about 10 miles in radius, was forcibly filled into a sea of swords. The monsters under the sea of swords had no time to resist before being sensed and taken away by the rain of falling swords. Not to mention that it also enjoys the full blessing of the new passive flying swordsmanship and gains a new skill critical strike effect. One of the special effects is Flying Slash. When using sword skills to attack from the sky to the ground, the damage will be doubled, and there is a certain chance of ignoring defense, shield, and blocking skills. What are you doing to stop my Dongfeng Express? These monsters, before he obtains new passives, upgrades equipment and skills, may still be able to fight with Luzioki, block them for at least 2 rounds, and hold up the scene without any problem, for example, a certain female dragon, a certain hell dog. But now, a sword energy that was as fast as lightning went down, and the monster probably didn't even react before it turned into white light and disappeared. What is a mirror enchantment? It's an instant kill if it can't be triggered at all. Looking around, the entire western part of the city was gradually shrouded in a colorful sea of sword energy. Countless sword rains fell down one after another, piercing through the bodies of each monster before returning to the sea of swords. Many monsters were filled with sword energy just after they appeared, and were wiped out. This scene was also seen by the people in the emergency dispatch command center. Everyone opened their mouths wide and looked at the scene in disbelief. The red dots displayed on the detection equipment disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye, and soon there were only a few sparse ones left. There were still new monsters appearing, but before even the detection equipment could react, they were washed away by the rain of swords falling from the sky and turned into white light. The city's top executive's eyes widened and his lips moved. Whose general is this, so brave? And at this time, The powerful Sun Yao warriors are still on their way. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 110. Inside the shelter. Because the environment is relatively simple and there is no screen to display the outside scene, all the personnel placed in it can only watch the development of the situation outside through the announcer's broadcast. Although the personnel of the relevant departments are famous for reporting good news but not bad news, with just a few necessary and pragmatic words, everyone can judge that the situation outside is probably not optimistic. Most of the ordinary people inside are safe, those who are in trouble just stay outside. At this moment, we also gathered together to discuss the development of the situation and our worries about the future. There are also many people who are depressed and even crying because they have lost relatives and friends, and people they know next to them are constantly whispering to comfort them. Of course, there is also a look of rejoicing, feeling that he ran fast enough and did not suffer any disaster. Everyone has different expressions. Faced with this unexpected situation, many people can no longer hide their true emotions. Lu Wanyi pursed her lips, held Haitan in her arms, and kept kneading his ears with her hands, as if this could relieve her inner worries about her brother. As an ordinary person, he could only hide in the shelter and tremble in the face of this situation, but Lu Zioki has become an excellent adventurer. How can he have a pet like Black Carbon Head if he is not excellent? Lu Wanyi had always thought that she was the backbone of the family. She didn't expect that such an unexpected situation would happen today. Not only would she not be able to play any role, she would not be able to help Lu Zioki in any way. Instead, it became Lu Zioki's burden and held him back. She recalled that Lu Zioki was afraid that she would be alone and not safe in the shelter, and he would not allow her to refuse. He forced Haitan into her arms and let him protect her on his behalf. And what Lu Zioki said to her while holding her in her ear. Her face was both sweet and shy. Lu Wanyi thought of the unprecedented feeling she experienced when she was held by Lu Zioki and flying in the air. Even though she was separated from the embrace of the earth and flying in the air, she was held in Lu Zioki's strong arms, as if a ship that had been drifting for a long time had finally returned to its own harbor. It was a sense of peace of mind, comfort, and an indescribable sense of solidity and happiness. This quickly stabilized her mood, and also allowed her to further realize a fact. Her younger brother, Lu Zioki, has really grown up. He has become an upright man. Already, no longer need myself. When Lu Wanyi thought of this, she felt a little disappointed. Not only did I have a thought in my heart. If only, I could become an adventurer. Will this allow me to be by my brother's side again? This thought passed away and was firmly pressed into her heart. Now she was more worried about Lu Zioki, who was fighting monsters outside the shelter. She didn't dare to imagine any unfavorable scene for Lu Zioki, but she couldn't control her constant uneasiness. He had no choice but to rub the black charcoal-headed dog's head desperately and watch it keep changing its expression in his hands to divert his attention. "Black Tontu, my special meow, who did you mess with?" Suddenly, the announcer shouted in surprise. "Wait, what is that?" Now the situation outside has suddenly changed. After hearing this, everyone paused and stopped what they were doing. Even those who were crying couldn't help but whisper a lot, and listened carefully to the next broadcast. Oh my God! A colorful ocean actually appeared in the sky above Zikan district. This is like the ability of a certain adventurer. Is it possible that a Sun Yao level adventurer finally took action? But this method does not come from any known solar adventurer. Look! The ocean is constantly expanding. It breaks through the clouds and covers the entire Zikan district. Oh! My God! While it is expanding, it is also constantly attacking the monsters below. It's not clear what kind of attack it launched. I just saw a flash of light, and the monster below turned into white light. The mirror enchantment was not even triggered. The monster was instantly killed with one strike. We have zoomed in on the captured footage 30 times. We have finally solved the mystery of this light. This is actually a sword energy. Could it be that the ocean above the sky is all sword, 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 sword energy? The ending sound rises. At this point, the announcer stuttered. For broadcasters, they have received strict training. No matter how surprised they are, they will not stutter unless they can't help it. However, no one cared about his gaffe at this time. Everyone was immersed in his vivid description and opened their mouths, shocked and amazed by this majestic and powerful power. Basically all the monsters outside have been wiped out by sword energy. As soon as this statement came out, many people became excited and cheered in advance. Lu Wanyi also breathed a sigh of relief. Although she was still a little worried about Lu Zioqi's safety, it was obvious that Lu Zioqi's safety had been improved a lot after the situation was reversed. Click. Xiao Yan held a sword in one hand and a shield in the other, and walked out of the mirror barrier with several students in her class who had become adventurers. At this moment, she has updated her equipment and skills, and her strength has greatly increased. Thanks to Lu Zioqi's blessing, this group of students has already reached the realm of the early stage of Starlight. Under the leadership of Xiao Yan, it is not a problem to deal with some single monsters in the early stage of Yuehui. To put it bluntly, Xiao Yan is playing the main role in the front, and they are shouting C666 from the back. Look at the sky. Zhao Peng pointed at the colorful sword sea above the city and exclaimed, "What is this?" Rainbow clouds of different colors fell from the sky, blasting the monsters that had just appeared in the city into white light, and then returned to the ocean suspended in the air. Is this because finally a Sun Yao level adventurer has taken action? Xiao Yan breathed a sigh of relief. She had been fighting at such a high intensity, and she had to take care of the students in her class. It was really stressful. At this moment, she secretly muttered in her heart, "I don't know how that brat Lu Zioqi is doing now. This guy can actually fly. Doesn't it mean that he has entered the moonlight? Impossible. I do not believe." Of course she didn't want to believe it. Otherwise, with Lu Zioqi's actual combat power, if this brat reaches the Yuhui level, wouldn't he have to overpower her as a teacher in the future? Zhao Xueqing looked at the rainbow clouds drawing various trajectories in the air, and felt inexplicably familiar. She couldn't help but think of Lu Zioqi's colorful sword energy in the tower. No. It shouldn't be possible, he's not that BT yet. After all, the two of them were separated for only 2 days last time. Forget about a breakthrough in cultivation, is it possible that the skills can leap up several levels in a short period of time? Zhao Xueqing shook her head slightly to dispel the speculation that arose in her mind. And what is Lu Zioqi, who has been talked about by several people, doing? Flying recklessly in the sky, he seemed to have discovered Huadian. These monsters don't come directly from the dungeon at all. Instead, it was randomly transferred to the city from an unknown place on the other side through a formation. That's why the location where the monster appears is erratic, and the speed at which it appears is so amazing. In a short period of time, hundreds of monsters above UXZ level appeared. But since it appears through transfer, relevant traces will inevitably be left near where the monster appears. Lu Zioqi observed carefully in mid-air and finally discovered the pattern of monsters appearing. It draws a circle with a diameter of 10 kilometers with a point as the center. Within this circular range, monsters will randomly appear at any point. Outside the circular range, monsters can only walk or fly past. After determining the center of the circle, Lu Zioqi naturally made a great discovery. In mid-air, he quickly caught the instigator behind the incident. That's right. It's those cultists whose brains were kicked by donkeys. At this moment, he is hiding in the center of this circle, in a dilapidated and abandoned factory. Sensing that the familiar grey robe appeared within his range of perception, Golden Core monks have enhanced 6 senses and need to be actively stimulated. Luzioki flew over directly and shouted, "Cunning villain! Where are you running?" He threw a burst of sword energy at the opponent. The galloping sword energy directly destroyed the building, rubble rolled, building materials fell to the ground, and smoke and dust filled the surroundings of the grey-robed man. According to the conclusion that there is no harm in the presence of smoke, Luzioki can basically conclude that the man in grey robe was not harmed by this. Because the sword energy shot out by Luzioki was disconnected from the grey-robed man before it came into contact with him, as if it had been swallowed by something. Sure enough, the smoke and dust dissipated, and the originally dilapidated factory building now had half of its roof lifted off, making it look even more like a ruin. A strange device appeared in front of Luzioki's eyes, standing between him and the cultists. This device is like a glass bowl that is buckled on the ground and only reveals its true shape when it is attacked. The glass bowl firmly covered the grey robe, and the sword energy bombarded it without causing any waves. It's useless. It's too late. The man in grey robe sat on his knees in the center of a mysterious formation, his head drooped, his whole body covered in robes, and his face could not be seen clearly. His voice came out from the device with hysterical madness and seemed to be mixed with a bit of regret. When Luzioki heard the voice, her expression changed and she looked strange. This voice seems a bit familiar. It seems that. Thinking of this, he suddenly had an idea and shouted to the man in grey robe, "Stop it, Ahau! It's full of sword energy outside."